Hi, my name is Terry. I have 3 college degrees, including a master's degree from an Ivy League university. I'm fluent in 2 languages, and I have a commercial driver's license, which allows me to operate heavy trucks, and I still can't find a job. My girlfriend's been working at a fast food restaurant for the past 9 years, but what she really wants to do is become an elementary school teacher. So every day I'm going to be coming on here and telling you guys stories about things that I think are interesting or cool, and then I'm going to teach you a little bit of Spanish until I can earn enough money to send my girl to teaching school. So today we're continuing our series on Andrew Carnegie. Today's part 2. If you haven't seen the first part, I highly recommend you go back and watch it so you can see how we got here. But at this point, we discussed how Carnegie had made a decision that changed the trajectory of his life forever. He decided to put all his eggs in one basket, and that basket was steel. See, immediately following the Civil War, the Union was newly rebuilt. But after a bloody war that was fought on U.S. soil, the nation badly needed rebuilding. And Carnegie rightly predicted that steel would be a prime necessity in this rebuilding process. And he was positioned to be the king of its empire. Carnegie believed that he and other industry titans were actually doing the country a favor by enterprising in business because they were providing the country with what it desperately needed. From his perspective, the bigger a business became, the greater America would become by extension. Some of his behaviors, however, were quite unusual when compared to other industry men. Like Benjamin Franklin, he was self-taught and extremely articulate. He would memorize and quote very long sections of Shakespeare and RobberBarons just for fun. He was also far more philanthropic than most business people during this time. But one belief that he had was one that many people shared, that creating wealth was the most noble endeavor that any human being could embark on. Generally, he reflected in his belief that amassing vast amounts of wealth would ultimately result in human progress as a part of God's divine will. And he wrote extensively about this in his wildly popular book, The Gospel of Wealth and Other Essays. This book was written at the height of his career, and it argued that individual capitalists were bound by a moral obligation to use their money to better society. He encouraged people with money to support the building of parks, libraries, museums, and schools in order to constitute what he called the lasting good. Another thing that made him unique is that he maintained a visceral hatred for inherited wealth throughout his life. He believed that the children of rich and famous parents were almost never as talented or as smart as their parents. He believed that the true future leaders of a nation would rise up from its poorest members, because he believed that poor kids had an advantage, because they would learn a strong work ethic by watching their parents struggle to try to come up out of poverty. Perhaps his most controversial claim was that to die rich was to die disgraced. What he meant by that is that he believed that a man's highest moral imperative was to become rich. But once he became rich, most of his time and resources should be so wrapped up in charity, philanthropic work, and societal betterment that he should have very little money left at the end of his life. By 1900, Carnegie produced a quarter of the nation's steel, and $25 million of the company's $40 million profits went to him directly. With that money, he embarked on numerous philanthropic endeavors, but he decided that he wanted to dedicate himself to charity full-time for the remainder of his life. In order to do that, he had to turn his holdings into available capital, so he liquidated his assets. On February 5th, 1915, at 79 years old, he testified in front of Congress, and here's what he said. "My business is to do as much good in the world as I can. I have retired from all other businesses." He died in his home on August 11, 1919, at the age of 83. So, what do you think of Andrew Carnegie and his ideas? Do you agree with him? The Spanish I'm going to be teaching you today is Has vivido una buena vida. Has vivido una buena vida. Has vivido una buena vida. And what that means is, have you lived a good life? If you like this video or you learned something new, drop a like down below. If you have a topic that you'd like to see me cover, drop a comment. And if you'd like to support this work that I do, there'll be a link to the Cash App in the description box below. We'll see you next time.